Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to make a start. Hope you're having a nice day so far. My name's Graeme Simpson. I work for IBM. Specifically, I am in the IBM Cloud division in the CISO team. So it's part of my job, along with a great deal of others, to make sure that IBM Cloud's kept secure. My talk today, I'm going to be talking to you about secrets management on the scale of a cloud service provider. So, what is a secret? A secret is a small amount of protected material which unlocks something more interesting, so more precious. But actually, it's the secret itself then becomes as valuable as the thing that you were trying to protect. And that can take the form of all sorts of things. As it says up there, API keys, encryption keys, things like KEX and KEKX, key encryption keys. Before we go much further into that, I'd like to tell you a quick story about my primary school days. So at primary school, they sent us a maths challenge, a maths puzzle to try and solve. And that was the number of handshakes between an arbitrary number of people. So these two fine stock image gentlemen are shaking hands, two people, one handshake. If you want to try that between yourselves and count, you can make sure that that's true. Two people and one handshake. So I'm going to show you another slide in a second. Yeah, one handshake. And I'd like you to try and work out how many handshakes. I know you're all expecting to be able to snooze, but you've got to do a little bit of thinking. So, answers shouted out, please. How many handshakes between 5 people? I can see some cogs whirring. I've heard 10 and 25. Right answer is 10. Well done. That was very fast. So back in primary school, I came up with this equation for doing that. X squared over, minus x over 2. So 25 minus 5 divided by 2 is 10. I thought at that age that I was clearly a genius. My teachers may or may not have thought I was a prodigy, but in reality I think I probably just peaked very early. So, how can we use that? How many handshakes when you've got this many people? And the answer, of course, is I have no idea. I am not going to count all of them, but it's a lot. So why have I told you that story? It's to give you a sense of scale. When you're talking about IBM Cloud or any cloud service provider, you're talking about an enormous number of things connecting to other things, hence handshakes. But my story's not quite accurate, because when we're thinking about handshakes like in that maths puzzle, everything shakes hands with everything else. And in reality, that's not actually true. That's not how it works with cloud services. You get clusters of things together, depending on the scale or size of a particular service or thing that's running in the cloud. So typically, for a smaller thing, you might be looking at, say, 20 or 30 secrets covering encryption and interconnections and things like that. For a larger service, you might be talking about 500 or even 1,000 secrets that you're managing just to run a single but large secret. So, of course, what we've got is secret handshakes. I hope you like my joke there. So, IBM then, what sort of scale are we talking about exactly? So IBM are the 6th largest cloud service provider in the globe. Sounds impressive. Amazon are number 1. They've got 30-something% of all of the cloud power, or in terms of money at least. IBM, we're a mere 2%. So, a much smaller player really, but even 2% of the global cloud, that's an enormous amount of cloud infrastructure and cloud power we've got. And that map represents all of the data centers we've got around the globe. The ones which are particularly bad for anybody that's colorblind are the multi-zone regions, the sort of double bubble ones. And those ones are actually 3 or even in one case 4 different data centers all within a fairly close geographical area. And they're connected with super fast pipes in between all of them. Back to our handshake problem. And that means you've got the speed of a single data center, but the resilience, the redundancy of the split. So one of them can burn to the ground, and the rest of them can keep going. So yeah, IBM, huge numbers of cloud power. Here's a lovely picture of a data center. I don't know how many people have been around a data center. I've been around a few. I've never seen one that looks like that. Color-coordinated lights, lovely. But it's easy when we're thinking about this sort of thing to consider the data center quite an abstract thing. Okay, so the data center, a secret goes wrong, or it burns to the ground in the greatest calamity, but it's over there. Okay, you might lose Facebook or Netflix or something for a while, but how much of that is an actual real-world impact? And you have to remember that they're actually connected to things in the outside world as well. So it actually has a real-life impact. And this picture I've chosen specifically relates to IBM very well, because IBM, while we're a lot smaller, we specialize in those industries which require higher security or higher regulations depending on the industry. So that might be financial services, that could be the airline industry or healthcare. And each one of these has a different regulation. So in America, it's HIPAA for healthcare. So what uses secrets? Well, of course, there's lots of different things, and it tends to sort of build up in layers. So right down at the bottom there, or actually at the top of my list, we've got bare metal. So bare metal represents an actual server or some tin, which, through IBM Cloud you can purchase, or through any cloud. And then building on that, you've got hypervisors and then VMs or containers. Storage could be native storage, it could be databases, that sort of thing, cloud object storage. And of course, you'll see TLS everywhere, stringing the whole lot together, backed by certificates to make it secure. And then right on top of that, typically, you've got your application layer. So secrets right the way through. So on to the what do we do about the problem. Now, typically, you would use a secrets manager. IBM has one, all the other cloud providers have one. You can also buy open source packages, which you can use yourselves. And what does this actually do for you? Well, it's somewhere safe. It's a safe place to go and put all of your keys so that you can manage them. And it's not just a secure environment, they provide lots of other things as well. So, for example, if you put a certificate in there, the system's clever enough to recognize that it's a certificate and it has an expiry date. So once it gets to within 30 days of the expiry, you can get an alert so you don't miss something. And of course, these things come in various different options. So at a very basic level, you get a multi-tenant environment, so lots of different customers sharing a single platform. You get a dedicated space to yourself, but it's still built on top of a shared platform. If that's insufficient for you, if you need some dedicated space, you can of course get your own. You can get ones which have redundancy built in, including globally. And at the top end, you've got things which are backed with something called an HSM, our hardware security module, and that is a dedicated bit of hardware that bolts onto the back to keep those secrets extra safe. So you get this nice management interface. This is sort of, this isn't a screenshot, this is just a nice picturesque version, but it gives you full lifecycle management of any of the secrets that you've got through, obviously, use right through to deactivation and destruction of the keys at the end. You can also do something called keep your own key or bring your own key, which is where if the customer's feeling particularly paranoid, they can generate the keys locally within their own infrastructure and import them directly into the secrets manager rather than rely on local generation. So then obviously your own entropy injection, that sort of thing. So that's quite useful. And then we get into things like notification. I've already mentioned about certificates, but you can be notified about all sorts of actions, whether it's just adding a key or even accessing it. And of course, depending on the industry you're in, you'll probably require some sort of audit capability. And the audit capability is configured such that the customer themselves even cannot go in and delete audit records. The whole thing is stored so that any time anyone accesses a key, deletes a key, etc., it's all audited for anyone else then to go and look at. These things aren't just passive. They don't just sit there and store the keys for you and then give them out on occasions. They also can do some pretty nifty tricks. So the first one we've got here is rotation. So some industries require you to rotate your keys. It's good practice anyway. At a minimum, you want to rotate keys every 12 months. But some industries specify 90, and I've even seen 45 days. If you went back to the example I gave at the beginning, where you've got a system with 500 to 1,000 keys, you imagine trying to manually rotate those every 4 to 5 days. It would be an absolute nightmare. It would be like painting the fourth bridge. You'd just be starting again just as soon as you've finished. And the chances are extremely high that it would go wrong. The chances of you managing to complete that successfully every time are very low. Whereas if it's built in an automated fashion, not only is it likely to be extremely error-free, but it's extremely fast. The whole thing can go out and rotate the keys very quickly, seamlessly, and No human has to get involved, so no one actually even has to see the keys. Much safer. And of course, it's not even just on a routine basis that you might want to rotate your keys. If, unfortunately, you discover that one of your keys has been compromised, you can slap that big red button and all of the keys you've got under your command get rotated in a very short space of time, therefore, hopefully, sorting yourself out for that particular potential vulnerability. And then lastly, my favourite is check-in, check-out. Historically, if you had, 5 administrators all needed legitimate root access to a server, then they would all have their own username and password. They'd have dedicated accounts so that you could track reasonably who was doing what. But that means you've got 5 permanently enabled privileged access accounts, and that's a risk. 5 risks. What you can do with these key secrets manager systems is you can check out a username and password when you want to go and administrate a server. You use that username and password, you go into the server, you do what you need to do legitimately, you've been given access to that particular key, and when you've finished, you come back to the secrets manager and you check it back in again. At that point, the secrets manager then goes off to the server and changes the password. So the password you were using 2 minutes ago is no longer valid. So there's no permanent privileged access available through that. So, what can go wrong if you don't do it properly? I thought I'd go through a few examples that have been in the news. So, most people will have heard of the Equifax one because it was so big. Some 145 million customer records, something like that, were exposed. And at the root cause of this was bad certificate management. They were hacked. They were hacked on an internal system which had vulnerability monitoring on it. And the vulnerability monitoring was unable to spot the problem because a certificate had expired. It had expired 10 months prior to the hack. That meant their vulnerability monitoring was unable to monitor the traffic. You can't say for sure it would have spotted the attack, but it certainly couldn't when it couldn't view any of the traffic. BMW. They used secrets management storage. Unfortunately, they used a COS bucket. It was of their own design. It didn't have any of the nice automated features, and somebody managed to make it public, which meant all of the keys then were accessible. For them, they were luckier. A researcher found that probably before anybody else did, so they were able to shore that one up. Microsoft did something similar. Sorry, Microsoft, I know you're here today. They did it the same, but they stored their keys in GitHub as part of a larger deployment. I think it was something like 32 or 38 terabytes of AI training data. It was what they intended to put out there. Unfortunately, they threw in a few keys for good measure. They were made public, and again, for them, they were saved by a researcher finding it. But my favourite, I think, has to be Toyota. Again, they were lucky. They didn't have any particularly ill effects from this. But again, their keys, same as Microsoft, were stored in GitHub. But theirs was stored for an amazing 5 years. They had an active key there ready for anyone to discover for 5 years. So not only were they daft with their key storage, but simple rotation would have reduced the problem by a good 4 years. Turtles all the way down. Now, this is a bit of an odd title, this one. And this is from a presentation, I think, from 2015 or 16, where they originally proposed this. It's not a very good description. I'll come to that. So, I've got a database. I have a secret. I need to access the database via my application. So I've got a secret. So I need to protect it. So I'm very good, and I encrypt it. So now I've got an encryption key to the secret to the database, and I'm good. So I put my encryption key, and I put it in a secrets manager as a safe place. Now I need to get into my secrets manager. So I've got an API key to get into the secrets manager, and I need to look after that. So I wrap it an encryption key. Now I've got an encryption key I need to look after, so I put it in the secrets manager. And you can see we've got a bit of a loop. So what do we do about that? Well, that's the nice thing about cloud infrastructure. It's not just an anonymous box. There is something at various levels, depending on where you are in the stack, that the cloud provider is able to provide some recognition, a cryptographic proof of the identity of that particular thing. So even though it's a container, it's essentially blank, that container is actually able to prove its identity. So when it reaches out to the secrets manager and says, I am who I say I am, can I have that first secret, please? Then it can do so in a way that it's confident it's okay. So you found your bottom turtle. If you haven't figured that one out, that's the Earth is on a giant turtle, what's under the turtle, another turtle, and so on. Yeah. So, you need something like that to break the loop and find that bottom turtle. So if you haven't already, how do you go about using or deploying some sort of secrets management? Well, the first thing you have to start with is assets. Where are your assets? And then for how you protect them with what keys. Because unless you go and find all those keys, you can't possibly go and protect them. So yeah, you need to go and find all your assets. And then these are the sort of headline attributes of a fairly decent secrets manager. I won't go reading through them, but I will pick out the one from the bottom, because bizarrely enough, I have seen this go wrong with other systems. Never log your secrets. So if you're auditing, you say, who's done what, when, what have they done, and you don't actually put the secret in the audit log. You'd be amazed how many people get that one wrong. So where does IBM come into all of this? Well, like any cloud service provider, we eat our own dog food. So we provide these tools for our customers to use, but we also use them ourselves because it's good practice to do so. So these secrets managers prop up, an enormous amount of our cloud infrastructure. And that is the end of my talk. I hope you found that of interest. Has anybody got any questions? Yes. Yes. That's a good question. Even though you, as a cloud, you kind of move around potentially, your compute unit, as it were, is movable. It's still on some sort of underlying device. And we do have devices that use things like state attestation to confirm that absolutely nothing has happened to that at a sort of BIOS level, and then you just build up from that. So even though it's moving around, you've still got a chain of trust back to the root, which you can trust. So yeah, it is both mobile, but there's still a chain there. So the answer is well, it's kind of twofold. One is there's an element of trust, but you don't have to entirely trust us or trust anyone else because we are audited by third parties. So you can go out and you can see that IBM have been checked. We don't have access to that, particularly if you use things like keep your own key. We simply can't get access. But you're right, at an underlying level, someone has to have a key somewhere that you can do something with. So there is an element of trust, but that trust is backed by third-party verification and audit, and we are constantly being audited. Myself, in my job, I review the parts of the cloud that go up to, that make up IBM's cloud. So I work with the development teams. Everything I do pretty much has to be auditable quality, even if that's a WebEx call, is video recorded for later audit purposes, and that is shown to third-party auditors so that they go through and they say, yes, we can see that you track everything, yes, we can see you're doing everything properly, and you are doing what you say you will do, including making sure that we can't get into access things that we shouldn't. Yes, obviously that's, we come into IBM bias here. HashiCorp's very good. We just bought it, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, like anything, yeah, you can still get it wrong. Yeah, HashiCorp's very good. We've been using it for years, and this was just stated, we bought it about a month or 2 months ago. Yeah, but you can still go and buy the open source, or you can use the open source version. Okay. I have no idea. You can email me that one. I can get back to you on that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.